Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Clark here, head chef at the Imperial Hotel. This is the last of our little cooking demonstrations that we've been doing here this week. First, we had chicken and ham pancake for starter, an Imperial Hotel classic. Then we had some lamb rump with some roasted Mediterranean vegetables. And then to finish, the pièce de la résistance is chocolate fondant with nut biscotti, vanilla cream, and some fresh raspberries. So what I've got here for you, so this is 130 grams of chocolate, 130 grams of butter, which we're going to melt in over a bain-marie here. We've got the butter and chocolate, 135 grams of each. We're going to pop the chocolate and the butter in a bowl over the boiling water. Very, very important, the water does not touch the bottom of the bowl that you've got the chocolate and butter in. Okay? We're just going to let that melt very, very slowly. It'll probably take around 5 to 10 minutes. So as I said, we're going to serve it with a nut biscotti, so we're going to get that on first after we've got our chocolate and butter on. So I've got 125 grams of sugar, 125 grams of plain flour, a quarter of a teaspoon of baking powder, some mixed nuts, any nuts you want. I've got some cashew nuts, some pistachios because I love the colour, and some walnuts. And they just get crumpled up, like so, bite-sized pieces. They go in as well. And then you've got one egg, okay? That then gets cracked in, and then you just need to stir it with your hands, wipe the gloves on, or you could use a wooden spoon. Basically, what we're after is we're after quite a wet dough. Now, you'll think to yourself when you make this, you'll think, I've messed this up, this can't be right, but this is generally right. This biscotti hails from Italy. It's what they generally drink with coffee after dessert. They dip it in their coffee, and you see it a lot on as a cake for like an afternoon tea or something like that. So this is coming together now. It's quite sticky. It looks a bit like a shortbread now, but it will come together if you just keep working it. And what we're going to do is, once it's worked, we're going to take it over to a lined piece of a lined tray over there. I'm just going to roll it out very, very, very thinly, and then we're going to cook it in quite a low oven, about 150 degrees, for about half an hour, 40 minutes until it's nice and set up inside. And then what you do with it, you have to then cut it very, very finely, which I'll show you a little bit later. And you have to then dry it out in the oven again, which is where it's just why they have it with coffee and stuff, because it's quite dry. It can take on the liquid. So as you can see now, it's quite sticky. It's come to a dough. I'm just gonna go and pop it on the lined piece of baking paper, and then I'm going to roll it out, and then I'll pop it in the oven. So this is rolled out quite thin now. I'm just going to pop it in the oven and let it cook. It will rise quite considerably and go quite. I'll probably half fill this tray. Okay, so just be mindful of that when you choose which tray you're using. That's going to go in the oven now, and then we'll go back to the chocolate. I've got the eggs and sugar in here now. We're just going to whisk that so it's really, really, really nice and creamy and fluffy. Okay, so be careful to start with, obviously, because that will, as you can see, it's going everywhere. You need to be really, really careful. But what you want to do is just make the egg yolk a little bit paler when you whisk it. Okay. Obviously, all the flours and the icing sugars have all been sieved, so you get no lumps. And as you can see, I'm whisking that to an inch. It's like, and this is just putting air into the product, basically. With the baking powder and the eggs, you just put more air in to make sure that it rises up. And as you can see, that is pretty much there. Just give it a little bit more. The chocolate's about 3 or 4 minutes off. So once that's melted, all we're going to do is just lift it off. Just let it sit for 5 minutes, just to get the initial heat out of it. While we're doing that, the egg yolk has been whisked. We're now going to line our mould. So I'm just going to go and wash my hands before I do this, and then we will we'll line the mould so that they don't catch in the oven. Okay, so we've just got some soft butter here. I've just put some gloves onto this. It's quite a messy job. I've just took half a pack of butter and just left it out on the side for half an hour. And all we want to do is literally just coat the outside of the moulds, the dairy moulds. These are metal moulds. You can use ramekins, but that's basically, we want a nice thin layer of butter all over the bottom of the ramekin, as you can see, around the sides. What's going to happen is when we put the chocolate fondant mixture in, that will then rise up, and that will take the butter with it and make sure it doesn't stick. So we have got a double protection for this though. is that once we've put the butter on, obviously that will then take on icing sugar, that'll take on flour, but also that'll take on some cocoa powder. So what we're going to do is, so this recipe makes 6, by the way, the recipe I gave you at the start. So that's 130 grams of butter and chocolate. It is 135 grams of whole egg, 20 grams of egg yolk, 100 grams of icing sugar, 55 grams of plain flour, 4 grams of baking powder, and 15 grams of cocoa powder. That will make 6 for you, so perfect for a dinner party. So we're finished with the butter now. All we then do is, got some cocoa powder, all we're then doing is just put some in, just use a tray, and then into the next one. Okay? Basically, don't throw them around like that. Basically, what's created is a little protection for us for when the fondant cooks. Okay? So I'm just going to do that to all of them. So, we've got our chocolate off of the stove now. That's been cooling for about 5 minutes. And this is with the butter in. We've now got the eggs and icing sugar here. And we've now got our lined moulds, all with the cocoa powder in that I've managed to not throw about the kitchen again. Then what we're going to do is, now the chocolate is at temperature, so you can see the chocolate in there, that's cool enough to now add the egg. So when you add the egg, you need to add it a bit at a time. You need to stir it in, and then you just fold it in, and what I'll do is that will get thicker as we go through. Okay? Now I'm just going to add this in three or four batches. So this is the sugar and the eggs that we whipped up to get nice and light. Okay? And as you can see, that is getting really nice and silky smooth now by me. So you need to fold, so you go round and then cut through, round and then cut through, so you don't use any air. Last little bit, got one more to add. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add the cocoa powder, flour and the baking powder. Now that does 2 things. It stabilises the chocolate fondant, and allows it to rise as well with the baking powder and give the eggs a hand. So then last bit in, make sure you get every last bit, as dessert cooking is a science, that's why we follow recipes. Now the baking powder, the flour are together already, I've sifted that through, and the cocoa powder is all sitting here, so I'm just going to add that in. But this will now start to look like a bit of a cake batter now. And that's all in there, so I'll show it to you before I start folding it in. Now again, it's around the bowl and then cut through. Around the bowl, cut through. Around the bowl, cut through. Around the bowl, cut through. So I'll just make sure I get every little bit in, and then I'll show you the consistency. As you'll see now when you make these at home, these are starting to become quite a stiff mixture in there. Okay, give it a nice mix. Make sure you keep all the air in. Meanwhile, our biscotti is in the oven. That's about 5 minutes off being cooked. Again, as I said, we need to make sure we dry that back out again, which I'm going to show you next. So we'll just pop these up. Okay. So what you want with these is you want about 3/4 or about 2/3 of the way up the dairy mould that we lined. Okay. So that, because they will probably grow 1/3 again in the oven, which is exactly what we want. Okay. So what we're going to do now is, I've got a little piping bag here. Feel free to use a jug, feel free to use a spoon. I just find this a little bit easier. So what we're going to do, make sure to come out at the end. We're just going to pour it in like this. And then that comes up and over, hopefully. Then what you can do then is ready to fill up. So that's about as high as you want to go. Okay? Alright? Now I'm just going to fill the rest up. Again, this will make 6, and split the mould into split it into 6, and then we can start thinking about getting the biscotti out and putting them in the oven then. Okay, so we've got 2 more to put up. While I'm doing that, I'll leave you for a moment and then we'll be back. The biscotti is done now. I've just cut 5 nice bits of fat. Just going to dry that out, so it just means putting it in an oven on a piece of baking paper for 4 or 5 minutes until you get a nice colour on it. It's up to you how many you serve. I mean, I'm going to serve 2 or 3 because of the size of the fondant, but fondant's now going in the oven. Now, this is quite critical. You need 185 oven, 185 degrees. It needs to go in there for 7 minutes, this size. This is a 5 fluid ounce Darrier mould. This needs to go in for 7 minutes, and then it needs to sit for a minute on the surface. Now that is very important, because what that does is that makes sure that that's got a nice relax before you turn it out. Because the last thing you want with the chocolate fondant is turning it out and then it just flooding all over the plate. Okay, so that's now going in the oven now, and then we'll do a little plate up. Guys, they're finished to our meal for this evening. We've got chocolate fondant. It's just come out of the oven. It's just sitting here, as you can see. I'm not going to show you quite yet, because if I turn out now, it might go flop. Okay, so just got some whipped cream here, just some vanilla, some icing sugar, and some double cream, just whipped up nice and light. I've just got a little hot water here, and I'm just going to turn it through the cream, just to make a nice, what we call a broche shape. I'm just going to put one on one end. Really important to keep a hot spoon when you do this. And I'm just going to go right through there like that. Okay, so it makes a really nice shape. And then I've got my biscotti now. That's nice and firm, all cut. Just going to lay that up against the cream, like that. So as you can see it like that. We're then just going to dot some raspberries around for a bit of freshness. And then the moment of truth. So this fondant should just hopefully just slip out. And it is, look, beautiful. Okay? And then the moment of truth, I'm just going to grab a knife. The moment of truth should just have an oozing centre. That is absolutely luxurious, guys. Please come and try one of these at the Imperial Hotel when they're on the menu again, or try at home. I hope you've enjoyed watching, guys, and I hope you'll be able to try some of these. Come and visit us soon. We open on the 1st of August.